Savannah Guthrie is an American broadcast journalist and former attorney. She's a main co-anchor of the NBC News morning show Today. Born December 27, 1971, age 54 years, Sandringham, Australia. Savannah Guthrie's quiet battles against public health narratives unfolded far from the bright studio lights, existing instead in the private spaces where responsibility, conscience, and humanity intersected, revealing a side of her story rarely acknowledged in the rush of headlines and sound bites. To the public, Savannah appeared composed and articulate, a steady voice navigating complex discussions with professionalism and clarity. Yet beneath that exterior, she carried the weight of translating evolving, often contentious health information to a nation hungry for certainty. These narratives were never abstract to her. They touched on fear, loss, trust, and the deeply personal decisions families faced every day. Savannah understood that public health messaging was not merely about facts, but about people, and this awareness shaped her internal struggle as she worked to balance accuracy with compassion. In moments away from the cameras, she wrestled with the knowledge that words spoken on air could influence behavior, shape perception, and sometimes intensify anxiety, a responsibility that lingered long after broadcasts ended. Her quiet battles were marked by the tension between urgency and caution, between delivering timely information and acknowledging the limits of what was known at any given moment. Savannah often reflected on how easily narratives could harden into absolutes, leaving little room for nuance, and she felt the emotional strain of operating within that narrow margin. She carried empathy for viewers who felt confused or overwhelmed, recognizing that skepticism and fear were not signs of ignorance, but natural responses to uncertainty. This empathy informed her approach, prompting her to ask careful questions, to listen attentively, and to resist simplifying complex realities for the sake of ease. Yet doing so sometimes invited criticism, placing her at the center of polarized reactions that questioned motives rather than intentions. Savannah's resilience in these moments was quiet, built not on defensiveness, but on a commitment to integrity, reminding herself that her role was not to persuade, but to inform with honesty and care. Privately, she grappled with the emotional toll of bearing witness to collective anxiety, absorbing stories of hardship while striving to maintain composure and steadiness. She learned that professionalism did not require emotional detachment, but it did require boundaries, intentional moments of disconnection that allowed her to process and recharge. These quiet battles also reshaped her understanding of trust, highlighting how fragile it can be and how easily it erodes when fear eclipses dialogue. Savannah became acutely aware of the gap between expert language and lived experience, and she worked to bridge it by centering humanity in conversations often dominated by data. This approach was not without cost. Navigating public health narratives meant walking a line where clarity could be misconstrued as certainty and curiosity mistaken for doubt. In private reflection, she questioned whether she was doing enough to honor the complexity of the moment, whether her words offered reassurance without minimizing pain. These questions did not weaken her resolve, they refined it, grounding her work in humility rather than authority. Savannah's quiet battles were also shaped by her own vulnerability, by the recognition that she too was living through the same uncertainties as her audience, making decisions with incomplete information and managing concern for those she loved. This shared experience deepened her sensitivity, reminding her that the distance between broadcaster and viewer was far smaller than it appeared. Over time, she learned to accept that no narrative would ever satisfy everyone, and that the pursuit of balance was itself an act of care. Her strength lay in persistence, in showing up day after day with a willingness to engage thoughtfully, even when criticism was loudest. Savannah's approach challenged the notion that authority must be inflexible, offering instead a model rooted in listening, questioning, and evolving understanding. The quiet nature of her battles did not diminish their significance, rather it underscored the emotional labor involved in holding space for uncertainty in a culture that often demands definitive answers. Through these experiences, Savannah's perspective broadened, reinforcing her belief that communication during times of public health concern must be grounded in empathy as much as expertise. She carried forward a deeper appreciation for the power of tone, timing, and transparency, recognizing that trust is built not through perfection, but through consistency and sincerity. In unveiling these quiet battles, Savannah Guthrie's story becomes one of thoughtful endurance, illustrating how the most profound struggles are often fought internally, shaped by a commitment to responsibility, compassion, and the enduring belief that informing the public is ultimately an act of service grounded in humanity.